Thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm Chris Capistran, Cobalt's president, and I'm joined today by Michael Ochs, and Mike is our lead architect for R&D. For those of you who have downloaded any of our other solutions under the CRM lab, you're pretty much looking at the lab here. Well, you're not looking at it because there's no video. But Mike and I, it's one of our goals is to build add-ons for the CRM community. And this is really our first venture into what we consider sort of a pro add-on as we move forward. So we really appreciate you taking the time today to learn about this Migration Dynamics add-on, new solution for moving your on-premises CRM orgs to CRM Online. Actually pretty timely based on Microsoft's announcement yesterday for Dynamics 365. We really think that that's even going to amp up the demand even more for customers looking to get off of the on-premises version to the online version. We'll have to work and see the details of that and how that's going to impact people's urgency. But we're going to start encouraging people to get on CRM Online in advance of Dynamics 365 so they're ready when the new offering is available. So the purpose of the webinar today is really to give you a background on the Migration Dynamics solution and why we built it, and then also dive into an in-depth demo. Mike is actually going to take the second half and show you a live migration from CRM 2011 to CRM Online. As we go through, please feel free to enter questions in the chat window. We'll do our best to answer them at the end of the demo. We should have 10 or 15 minutes left over at the end to accommodate any questions. And of course, anything we don't get to, we can always follow up via email. We'll give you contact information at the end, and then we'll also follow up with the meeting. So I think that's it for housekeeping. Let's go ahead and get started. So as CRM partners, we've all seen CRM Online really catch up to on-premise and in most cases even pass it in terms of what the capabilities are. It's easier to deploy, the upgrades are seamless, and the native integration with Office 365 and Power BI have really got customers clamoring to upgrade. Again, as I just mentioned, I think the announcement of Dynamics 365 and all the promise there is really going to take that to a new level. So I think that we're going to see even a higher demand for CRM Online going forward. And sounds like a good opportunity for Cobalt and other CRM partners. We've got a group of customers, tens of thousands of customers, in fact, who are running previous versions of CRM, which seemed like a good opportunity for us to help them migrate to the cloud. I think it is a huge opportunity, but it's definitely not without its challenges. Anyone who's completed the migration to CRM Online knows that it's not easy or straightforward. And even worse, customers really expect it to be not that painful and not that expensive because you are moving from one version to another in their minds. So sometimes it might even seem like the risk outweighs the benefits of moving for our customers and for us as partners offering it as a service. And really communicating that can lead to some frustration and disappointment. So why is that? Well, up until now, you really only had three options for moving on-premises to CRM Online. You can use the built-in Microsoft import tools. They've got the built-in data import and then the bulk import tool that are obviously cost-effective. They're free. And so that's a good option. You can use the third-party applications like Scribe and Kingswaysoft, or you can build your own custom application to migrate the data. Any of these approaches we believe are not optimal, and they might be hurting you more than you might realize. But the fourth option, which is doing nothing, could really damage your reputation and your bottom line. So if you get to buy a group of leads and you want to load that into CRM, Import Wizard's fantastic. It's very easy to use. But migrating an entire system with potentially dozens or hundreds of custom entities, it's not going to work. So no matter how careful you plan an import using those text files, you need to make multiple passes, and you're likely going to lose relationships and data. And people can't use the CRM system while you're doing the migration. So now that we've sort of eliminated that as a robust option for migration, let's talk about Scribe and KingswaySoft. So Scribe and KingswaySoft are great tools. Cobalt uses them, and we use them for some replication and some third-party integrations, and they're fantastic for that purpose. And the reason that they're so great at that task is that they've included CRM adapters. So whether it's through Scribe's web interface or KingswaySoft's SSIS interface, they've abstracted out that CRM layer for you so that you can interact with it without having to know how to get directly at the CRM web services. The issue with these tools is that you still need to be intimately familiar with the data and relationships. In addition to that, you have to understand all the complex rules that come with creating records in CRM. So these are things that we've bumped into over the years. We've been working with CRM since 2003, and we've done probably almost 200 data migrations from legacy tools. So we've bumped into a lot of these issues. A good example is statuses on activities. So you can't create an email, for example, that has been sent. It's a two-step process. CRM will create the email as a draft by default, and then it needs to be updated to set the status to sent. So there's a whole bunch of little rules and gotchas like that if you don't know them, you could really be in trouble. Scribe and KingswaySoft give you a better tool, but you still have to know all the rules and do the work yourself. Again, to be fair, these are great third-party tools, and they're very flexible, and they can be powerful for data integration and replication, but they really aren't migration tools. So at this point, you're probably thinking, if I have to do all the extra work myself, why don't I just build my own tool? As partners, we have tons of experience working with CRM. We've got developers on staff. Let's just build a tool ourselves. Of course you can do that, but now you've got to take on the burden of hundreds of hours of development and rigorous testing to make sure that you get through all those gotchas. Those pitfalls that we talked about previously still need to be accounted for so that the data is created in the right way. If you don't handle that, you're going to end up with missing records and a lot of records with incorrect status. Everything you do is going to look good at first, but after a while, you're going to notice missing records, relationships, other gotchas. And at that point, it might be too late because some of that data has been updated since you finished the import. So take a look at this entity diagram. I love showing these. This is actually just the out-of-the-box activities entities in CRM, so it's a fraction of the entire data model. So this just gives you an idea of the complexity of the relationships that exist. That doesn't even count the fact that CRM, being the great and flexible XRM tool that it is, allows customers to create their own entities and their own relationships and fields on the fly. That only makes it more complicated, and most customers likely don't have documentation of what they've done to the system, and they're going to expect you to take that all into account when you do the migration. Yeah, you could probably pull this off, but it's going to cost your customers a lot of money, and again, this is something they don't think could be that expensive. They expect it to be relatively straightforward. So after all those options that we talked about and me sort of running through the negatives of all the different options, it'd be tempting to just stick with CRM on-premise. And there are a lot of people out there. We were at Convergence 2 years ago, since there is no more Convergence, and I think in a room of 1,000 people, 500 or 600 of those people at the time were still running CRM 2011. So I think the numbers have changed a little bit, but there's still a lot of customers out there running older versions of CRM. So I think that, in the short term, staying on that version is a good idea. Long term, that's not going to work. Microsoft keeps releasing online only and online first options. Anyone who's tried to see the releases of all the cool Office stuff you can do and then realize it's only available for CRM Online and Office 365. We've all struggled with the fact that Power BI is a great tool. Again, really only natively works with CRM Online. So more and more customers are going to be driven to the online product. Also, as partners, Microsoft's really pushing us to deploy cloud solutions. They've changed the competency requirements and a lot of the compensation to really drive partners to CRM Online as well. So you can't migrate your customers without shutting down all their operations, charging them a lot of money. You're going to end up with frustrated customers. Most likely staff on your end to be frustrated, and you could have a negative impact on your reputation as a partner. Your customers are going to want to migrate. They're going to find somebody else to help them who can either deliver or, as we all know, will at least promise them they can deliver. So this is a really bad scenario for us as partners. I was recently looking at a thread on CRM UG's online community, and there was a 2011 customer that their partner was charging 10 grand for them to migrate from 2011 to CRM Online. He wasn't happy about that. But the other partners and customers even chimed in and said, well, that's not really that bad in terms of cost for a migration. But other people started to chime in and say, wait, it's going to cost me at least 10 grand just to move from one version of CRM to another. So customers don't think it should cost this much, and honestly, neither do we. So what if we had a cost-effective way to reliably move data, it accounts for entity relationships, eliminates disruption for customers, and doesn't take a lot of your staff time? Sounds like something you want to make available to your customers. Well, let's take a look at Migration Dynamics. So Migration Dynamics is a purpose-built tool for migrating and replicating CRM data. All it does, moves data from one CRM organization to another without access to SQL Server. That last point is key. When you're migrating to CRM Online, the sticking point is always the fact that you don't have access to SQL Server. Doing on-premise to on-premise, we call them redeploys here at Cobalt. They're fairly straightforward. You back up the database, you move it to the other server, you restore it, you import the organization, you're up and running. You can do it in less than an hour depending on the size of the database. CRM Online, you don't have that capability, and you don't even have the ability to write scripts to push the data over one-to-one into the database. So you have to go to the web services. So that's what this tool does. It does all that and abstracts it for you. Further than that, Migration Dynamics knows CRM better than you do. It looks at the metadata, which is the data that defines the data structure inside of the CRM database, and figures out all the relationships that exist. Not only that, it also figures out the most efficient way to move the data from one system to another. So it actually reads and examines the data, and we've got some algorithms we set up that will actually import it in the most efficient way to minimize the number of broken relationships and issues you run into. So I just mentioned broken relationships, so that doesn't sound good. But the difference with our broken relationships is that we actually account for them. It's inevitable that you're going to have things that don't line up on the first pass. We take care of those records as we pull them in. So quick example before we get to Mike's demo, because I know watching a bunch of slides is not what people came here for. You came to see it in action. You have accounts and contacts. It's a pretty straightforward example, right? That's the core of CRM, accounts and contacts. But even that is relatively complicated. If you have a contact, let's call her Susie, who's the primary contact for an account, ABC Corp, and then ABC Corp is also her parent account. But if you import Susie's contact record before you import the ABC account record, ABC doesn't have a primary contact. But if you import the account record before the contact record, if you import the contact record before the account record, then Susie has no parent account. So Steve and I got confused there, just even with a simple example. These are referred to as orphaned records. With all the other options we talked about before, you would have to make multiple passes where you'd have to import the contacts, then import the accounts, then import the contacts again to make sure all of those relationships get set. Not bad if you've got a dozen or so records, but if you've got thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of contacts and accounts, doing just those multiple passes could take days. So we automate all of that and we connect those behind the scenes for you as the data flows into the system. So now that we've gone through that, you're probably thinking, pretty complicated, what happens if something goes wrong? Well, in addition to tracking all the orphaned records, we've got some really robust error logging so that if something does go wrong, we can show you that. And Mike's going to demo that in a minute. Once we see that, if there's an issue that can be resolved, all you need to really do is rerun the migration. So let's say you forgot to include an entity in the initial migration because you didn't know the customer was using it for anything. All you need to do is rerun Migration Dynamics for that entity, and it'll resolve all the orphans and fix the errors. So the final question and the big problem with all data conversions is, okay, that sounds great, but how long does it take to move the data? Well, the answer is, with Migration Dynamics, it doesn't matter. We've included the ability to track and copy changes during the migration. This means that users can continue to use CRM while the data is migrated. I'm just going to pause for a second while I let that one sink in. This is our game changer feature, we think, for the migration. You don't have to worry about blocking off huge amounts of time where people are locked out of the system or try to cram it in over an 80-hour weekend where you're running 24/7. Migration Dynamics syncs all the changes as it goes, and then it lets you know when it's done. Once you're done, you simply the system, and you're ready to go. Okay, so now you're thinking this is either too good to be true, or it's going to be really difficult to set up and run. Well, that's what I have Mike here for. Second half of the demo, he's going to do a live migration from 2011 CRM Online. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike, and you can see Migration Dynamics in action.
Thanks, Chris. Let me take control here. Okay. So, should be seeing my desktop now. Yeah, I think Chris hit on a lot of things that I'm going to show today. The specific gotchas are where we focus most of our time on this release. This is a beta release, and what we're shooting for is primarily for correctness and completeness. We've got about, you can see on my desktop, I've got my 2011 system open, I've got my online system open on the right. We've got about 300 records, a little over 300 records in our source system. Not a real world scenario by any means, but all of those gotchas that Chris talked about are addressed in this data set. And obviously, we couldn't do a couple hundred thousand record migration in the span of a half-hour demo. So, like I said, 300 records. We're getting about 2 records a second throughput to CRM Online right now. So it'll take about 2.5 minutes for this to run. By the time we release, we plan to get a little more juice out of the web services, bump that number up. But like I said, correctness and completeness, we want the data to flow over the first time, and we want it to flow over exactly as it should, or exactly as it exists in the source system. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into the demo here. I've already installed Migration Dynamics on my source 2011 system here. from this dashboard, you can see some of the data that is present in this system. I have the same CRM overview dashboard open in my online system. You can see there's no data over here right now. It's a completely blank CRM Online instance. So I've already installed Migration Dynamics on my source system. I'm going to head over to settings here for a while. And you can see once you install Migration Dynamics, there'll be this Cobalt tab under here, and there'll be a couple of icons here that I'll explain what they are. But to get started, we'll click on Migration Wizard. It's going to check to make sure that there's a license in place. It's going to start pulling down the metadata, CRM entities in the system. And then once that loads, it's going to give you the option to choose what type of migration. So we use Migration Dynamics internally for moving data between our development stage and user acceptance testing environments. We use it for basically keeping or maintaining a good test set of data. And when we do those types of migrations, we don't want to keep the data in sync as, after the migration is completed. We just want to move it over one time and be done with it. So when we do this, on this screen, we leave this checkbox unchecked. But if you check this checkbox, it does what Chris was talking about, and that's the live sync option. So once the migration starts, any records that are updated, created, deleted in the source system will get pushed to the target system so that all that data stays in sync while the migration is happening. I'm going to keep that checked for this one, so I can show you that. So from here, I need to enter the information about my target system, my destination CRM system. I've already run this once before on this source system, so I've got my credentials actually saved in here. To go over to the destination system, if this is the first time you visited the screen, you'd have to actually enter that information. It's pretty straightforward as to what needs to be in there. You can do on-prem to on-prem migrations, so IFD or Windows authentication. The way that Migration Dynamics works is that it queues the data up in Azure before writing it to CRM. So it quickly queues that data up, and then the whole migration process happens from Azure to the destination system. So if you are trying to migrate to an org that's behind a firewall, you're going to have issues. You need to make sure that it's accessible from outside of their network. Obviously, CRM Online is accessible, so from here I can click Next. And it's going to test the connection, make sure it can connect to my CRM Online org. It's going to pull some data down. Specifically, it's going to pull down all the users that I have in my destination system so that we can map those users on this screen. What's great about Migration Dynamics is you can actually, unlike what Chris was talking about with the redeploy, you can actually map multiple source users to the same destination user. We think this is pretty cool. So I can map, if I've got legacy users that still have some records assigned to them, I want to clean that up and assign them to new users. As part of the migration, I can do that directly from here. I can assign all these records to me. Obviously, we don't have a lot of users in our source system, but Migration Dynamics will try to map your users automatically. It will start by using email address to try to match them up, and then it will move on to the user's first name, last name, and if it can't find a match, it'll actually just map it to the user you entered on the previous screen. Good. In here. It's going to validate my setup. So on this screen, we've got a couple of informational messages, some warnings, and one error. And you can see I can't continue past this screen at this point because of this one error. So we're going to focus on this one first. I haven't installed Migration Dynamics on the destination CRM. So in order for Migration Dynamics to work, it has to be installed on both the source system and the destination system. I chose not to install it on the destination for the demo so that I could actually show you how to install it. I've got the Dynamics package on the desktop here. Double click it. It's going to bring up the package deployer. Continue. It's going to ask me to same sort of connection information to the destination system where I'm installing. Let's display a list of that. And I can pick my destination org. So it's connected to the destination system. That's all good. Now I have the option of selecting which package I'm importing. Migration Dynamics runs on, obviously, 2011, 2013, 2015, 2016. 2016 runs online. So depending on what org you're installing this on, you'll want to select the correct package to be installed. The boilerplate text here. Ready to install. Now it's going to do a couple of checks. If any of you have installed our solutions before, this is actually going to go out and check to see if you have any of these solutions already installed. If the version's different, it'll update it, and so on. So nothing's installed on the destination currently. Click next, and it's going to start installing. Head back here while that's running. And let's look at these other messages here. So the first one is an informational message. It says that there are custom plugins enabled on the destination org. Problem with custom plugins is that they interfere with data migrations in two ways. The first way is that they add overhead to write to CRM. So performance can be degraded by custom plugins. In addition to that, custom plugins oftentimes manipulate data on the way into CRM. We definitely don't want that because we want this to be a one-to-one migration where the data exists exactly as it exists in the source system. So Migration Dynamics is telling you, we're going to go ahead and disable these for you. Once the migration is complete, you'll see over here on the left, we have the migration cleanup. We'll run that, and that will take care of re-enabling those plugins for you. It also turns off auditing. You see another message here for auditing being turned off so that you don't have the overhead of creating all those audit records and, just in general having all that extra audit data from the migration in there. So it'll take care of that for you as well. These next four are telling us that there's solutions that haven't been installed in the destination. They're only warnings. You can do a migration and leave some solutions behind. Not a problem. You're just not going to be able to migrate any of the data associated with those solutions. For instance, I have a custom solution here. It only exists on my source org. That custom solution has a single entity. It's called custom entity. And what we'll see is that since I haven't installed that on my destination system, I'm not going to be allowed to move that data. This makes sense.
Right. It's important to note that you still have to put the solutions on the target organization. And one of the reasons that's important is if you have third-party managed solutions, you really want to install them on the target solution prior to migration. We could technically move the data structure as well, but we decided not to do that because that would cause all kinds of problems if we just moved the data and the entities over and insert them into your target system. The functionality that comes with the third-party solutions would likely not work, so that's why the best practice would be move all the solutions to the target, then run Migration Dynamics.
So there's another warning down here that you want to pay close attention to, and that's related to session timeouts. So if you're running IFD setup with ADFS in your source CRM org, you're going to want to set your timeout to be as high as possible because all of the queuing happens inside of CRM. So from this wizard, all of the queuing of the data happens inside this wizard. It gets pushed up to Azure. The actual migration, writing it, happens in Azure, so not as important for that. But if you're moving and queuing a lot of data, you'll want to make sure that your timeout is set up such that it won't time out while it's queuing all of that data. So there's a link here, shows you how to do that. The default is 60 minutes. We're only migrating 300 records. It's not going to take 60 minutes. So not a big deal for us, but if you are doing a production system migration that has a lot of data, you'll want to make sure to bump that. And then finally, we have our error message here that we're taking care of by calling Migration Dynamics on target system. So this is finished. You can click past this or boilerplate, click finish. And now if I click retry, going to go out, check all those things again, and you can see the error message went away. We can click past this now, and only our info and warning messages remain. Next. All right. So that's it as far as setup. At this point, you need to decide what entities you're going to migrate and select them from the list. If I scroll down here, you can see that my custom entity that I was talking about doesn't show up in the list because the solution's not installed with the destination. For this, I'm going to select everything, all 300 and some odd records. There's about 80 entities in this list that we'll be migrating. And from there, I can click migrate. And now it's going to do a couple of things. So preparing destination data. This is the algorithm. This is where the algorithm comes into play that Chris was talking about. It's doing those calculations. It's deciding what entities need to go over first to minimize the number of broken relationships. It's setting a checkpoint for the migration, which means that it's disabling those plugins that we talked about. It's disabling auditing, and it's writing that information about what it's doing in the log so that when the migration is complete, we can run the migration cleanup and turn all those things. So once it's done with that, it starts the queuing process, and you can see it's moving through the entities here pretty quickly. The queuing, like I said, is very fast. There's not a lot in the way. It's basically just pushing it up to an Azure queue for it to be written by the Azure service that's up there. So while you're queuing data, you can't move away from this screen. This is one of those things that you're probably going to want to do before you leave work one night. Like I said, it's quick. It should happen overnight. I think we moved close to 6 gig database, and it only took a couple hours. So there is a little bit of overhead there. You can't leave that screen. You got to let that go. Once you get to this screen, which is where it's actually migrating the data, it's actually writing it into CRM Online, you can move away from this at any point in time and come back to it by clicking the migration progress. So while it's doing that, let's consider a scenario where a customer came to us. We're in the middle of a migration to CRM Online, and we've got customers that are coming to us clamoring to buy Migration Dynamics from us. We can't halt our business. We can't not sell things while we're in the process of this migration. So with Migration Dynamics, we can keep business, we can stay open for business. I'm going to create a contact here. Adeline, that's my 3-year-old. I used my 6-year-old Emmeline in our webinar earlier. So Addie's up. If we have to do this 3 times, I only have 2 kids, so I don't know what I'm going to do. So create a contact. You can use Chris's kids. I'm going to create a new order for Adeline, rush order for Migration Dynamics.
Right, one thing just to point out while Mike's doing this is that a lot of our customers and a lot more CRM customers in general have portal-facing functionality, so it is painful to shut down operations internally. But if you do it off hours, you do it over a weekend, you can usually get away with it for customers. But if they've got customers online interacting with the portal, that becomes a real problem. Now you've got to put up a page that says, sorry, we're completely shut down for the next 2 or 3 days. Well, now you can continue to let those portals operate while you're doing the migration, and then just switch the connection when it's all done. So.
Let's see, I've got an order here. I'm going to go ahead and discount this because my daughter basically showing you, creation of a record, update of a record. I'm going to invoice this order. So that creates another record in CRM, an invoice that has products tied to it. And Addie decides to pay her bill, I can mark this invoice as paid and go on our merry way. So we'll see what that looks like here in a minute in the target system. Let's go back to our migration progress and see how we're doing. All right, so we got about 60 records remaining to be written out of the 300 plus, moving pretty quickly. So what you'll notice is that we have a couple of errors here. 3 in fact. So this was a known issue that we saw probably a week or 2 weeks ago while we were preparing for this webinar. We decided to leave it in place. It's the only error that is showing up, and we wanted to actually show the error logging that Chris talked about. So we can actually drill into these. If you leave this screen at any point and come back, you'll notice that those error messages go away. And that's because it queues them up initially to be viewed in this screen, but then once they're viewed, they're gone. However, they are written to the destination system. So I just clicked on the view all errors in CRM here, and you can see that these 3 errors are actually written into CRM so that you can always get to them. The specific error in this case is that by default, Microsoft CRM comes with 3 goals pre-configured. So those goals have to have unique names for some reason, and when we try to write the ones that are in 2011 over to CRM Online, there's a conflict because they have the same name, and that's what the error is. You can see it says this has got all the stack trace information, goal metric with the same name already exists, specify a different name again. Simple enough to fix for us, but wanted to be able to show you the error logging, and this will definitely be helpful for us. If you join the beta program and you do run into issues, it'll be great. This is great for us to be able to kind of dig into those issues. What happened? Back here, our source org. We're all set. We finished the migration. Everything's completed. So now I'm going to refresh my dashboard. Here I'm online. And there you have it. There's all the data. And if we look at the CRM overview, same dashboard in 2011, you'll notice just how similar these 2 views are, apart from the skin updates. Everything's flat now instead of 3D. But all the way down to, first thing you'll notice is these dates. In this case is by priority chart. So created on dates. Obviously, when you create something through the web services and CRM, the created on date is always set automatically to today's date. We've handled that for you so that the created on dates and the destination are the same as what they were created on in the source system. So you can see that all of these are exactly the same as it is over here. That's gotcha number 1 we've handled. So drilling down into this, I'm going to take a look at all cases. So Chris mentioned it a couple of times in his intro, and as you can see, we've maintained all the statuses as well. So we have active cases, resolved, we've got canceled cases. All of those came over with the exact same status that they had in the source system. Prove that if we open up the source system, take a look at cases, 33 cases in here, and you can see the variety of states and statuses. It's the same as the destination. All right, so gotcha number 2. Now we're going to open up one of these cases, and we're going to dig into it a little bit more. Obviously, we're handling, all of the default field mappings, case title, IDs coming over exactly the same, even though that's a writable or a read-only field in CRM. You've got all your lookups to the customer, and all that information is preserved. Obviously what you would expect from a migration. But if we drill down into this customer record, I'll show you what Chris was talking about earlier with the orphans and the handling of orphans on the way in. So Paul Cannon has an account. His account is Alpine Ski House. So assuming that Paul came in, the Alpine Ski House record came in before Paul, that's fine. It'll be able to link those two up. But if Paul came in before Alpine Ski House, what you would see normally is that Alpine Ski House would not have a primary contact because Paul is the primary contact. So there's the scenario that Chris was describing that's been handled seamlessly all on the way in. And 2 more things I want to show before I wrap up. So activities. Activities are one of the most strangely structured and one of the most complex things to move as part of a migration. I'm going to look at emails here. The reason that they're so complex is because they kind of don't fit the norm of the relationships in CRM. I'll show you that in a second. But as you can see, what Chris was talking about, these emails have all come in as complete. Well, 2 is completed, 1 is pending send, which is exactly what they were in the source system. So you don't have that issue of, I just migrated all my data, my emails to CRM Online, I'm all set to go, let's go live, and all of a sudden every email you ever sent from your source system gets resent by CRM Online. That would be a disaster with that. So this has been taken care of, setting those statuses. Complicated part of activities is these activity parties. So you can see here there's 2 people in the to field here. That's been handled. That's a kind of a wonky relationship in CRM it's very CRM specific, and it's why using an integration tool that's kind of a generic data mover or data integration, you can't do these sort of things as easily unless you build a purpose-built tool for moving CRM. So that's activities. Finally, the most exciting part, we're going to actually go take a look at that live sync data that we created while the migration was happening. So here it is. Here's our rush order for Migration Dynamics. Here's the one my other daughter from earlier today, but this is Adeline. You can see that it migrated the contact record over. It migrated all the products that we added. It handled the discount that we updated the order after it was created. And additionally, look at invoices. See, created the invoice and the associated product. So that's it from the standpoint of data. The one other thing I wanted to show you was the migration cleanup real quick before I hand it back over to Chris. Pretty simple. You'll want to run the migration cleanup from from the destination organization. Actually, after you finish your migration, if you're still on this screen on the source org, you can get to the migration cleanup by clicking complete your migration from here. If not, you can actually get to it from under the settings. Like map updated on this installed. So here it's going to show me a couple of tasks that it needs to complete. There's some leftover migration logs. Those are those error logs I showed you earlier. We'll clean those up. It's going to create a bulk deletion job to do that, so you don't have to wait for it to clean them up if there's a lot of them, and then it's going to re-enable your plugins for you. Click finalize. That'll take a couple of seconds. There's a lot of work to do. Once this is finished, you're all set. You can turn off the source system if you're comfortable with it. Leave the source system active and let people continue to use the source system while you audit the data that's in the destination for as long as you like, since that live sync is still enabled even after the migration completes, and you're all set. So that's all I have. Chris?
Thanks, Mike. So I think that's pretty much it. We're pretty excited about this product. We think it's going to be going to make our lives a lot easier. As I said earlier, we've got about 120 customers running CRM 2011, and we're getting ready to migrate all of those customers later this year. So that was part of the impetus for us building this tool, and we think that it's going to be huge for everybody. So you can also reach out to us here at the CRM Lab at cobalt.net, and we look forward to work with everybody. So thank you very much for coming today, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.